our third video.
When we upload it to PhotoBucket, is it a PSD or a PNG?
So we're going to upload this file to PhotoBucket as a JPEG because we're filling up a rectangle. But we'll get there. And we're also going to upload our reference image. So today, as I'm going to finish off this project, this exercise, I'm going to open up my reference image in Preview. So just double click it. And I'm just going to squeeze it into the corner here, just so I can see the true colors, the true textures of the original, right? And then within Photoshop, the architecture I have is that underneath everything, just to review, I've brought in my reference image. I've scaled it up to be print resolution. So if I look at the inches, it's larger than 8 by 10 inches at 350 pixels per inch. So if you haven't done that, make sure you do that. Otherwise, we work really hard on something that is not going to print at good enough resolution. So we want it to be larger than 8 by 10 inches and a resolution of 350 pixels per inch. Then on top of that, I put a 20% white layer. And then I filled in a rectangle, and then I put a lot of shapes, shape tools, all shape tools on top. But then at the very top, I have a copy of my background that I keep at 20% and lock. And that allows me now to see what I still have to do. So if I continue using shape tools, I don't have to just use the pure shapes anymore. I can, of course, use them, right? Get like a perfect ellipse there, and then do Command T to transform, stretch it, rotate it. That's what Command T allows you to do, both stretch and rotate, or scale and rotate together at the same time. I can also move it around. So Command T is very helpful. But if I want to customize it more, I right-click within it, and I can use Warp, which is kind of the most direct alteration tool for this project, and modify it. And then to choose the color, I can double-click within the icon of the layer and steal from the image and modify from the image, right? Something like that. Now, instead of creating a new perfect shape, which will steal that color, I could just duplicate the one I just made with Command J. So it says ellipse 6 here. If I do Command J, it will make an ellipse 6 copy. Then I do Command T, and I take that copy, and I can scale it, I can rotate it, and it just makes it a little bit more customized from the beginning. And then I can hit return, transform that more if I need to, tug this corner out, hit return, Command J, Command T. I have another duplicate I can use. So we're trying to use as few layers as possible, do this as efficiently with shapes as possible, but also not try to waste all our time customizing if we can just duplicate. So a lot of this is kind of efficiency. All right, so very quickly I just created from one ellipse that I modified and one color, I created 1, 2, 3, 4 layers that give me my image. Right? And so that's what I have so far. And at any time, I can use the Move tool at the very top of Tools, have Auto Select Layer on, and click on whatever shape is needed and choose a new color. And I can duplicate that. Command J, Command T. Put that in. And I can transform it more if I want to give it a little bit more of that stretch. And dip and pull. It's available to us. Now what's nice about having the little preview window here is I see that there's the triangles here. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in. I haven't done a triangle yet. You'll notice there isn't a triangle within the shape options, but there's what's called the Polygon Tool. So the Polygon Tool is for any straight-edged two-dimensional shape. So if I click on that, then I can set the number of sides up in the tool option. So a triangle is 3 sides, so I keep it at 3. And now I can do a triangle. I'm going to go ahead and make it white. And then I can use Command T to stretch it into what I need and rotate it. And I can also right-click within and use Warp and bend the triangle if I need to. But if I don't want to bend it, I'm going to use Distort or Skew. And that's the easiest way to just perfectly define the corners of your triangle. So Warp will tend to curve things. Skew and Distort will not. Turn. Now there's a little shadow shape there, which I think is important to the composition. So how can I do that? Well, I'm just going to do a regular rectangle. It's going to tilt it, give it a slightly darker color, and then Command T, rotate it, and set it on top. Now I want to move that down underneath some of the layers, right? So if I move it underneath the rectangle, that works. But if I want it on top of the rectangle, I might need to move these other images, these other shapes on top of it, right? So it's all about the layer order. And then I can always use Distort to sync this rectangle up with the corners of my existing triangle. So what this project is really about is getting used to these transform tools. Both this and Cartoon Jumble, whether we're doing vector shapes or raster shapes, we want to get really comfortable with Command T and the free transform options. Because you'll see all the control that gives us if we can use them correctly. There we go. And again, we're not going for perfection, but that control is very helpful. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Right now I need to duplicate that and make it bigger still. So I'm going to use transform, and this is going to be the edge of that little roof line. And then find the darker color. So it'll get you a little used to the color selection oddities within Photoshop as well. Redden it up a little. Okay? Now I can move that behind. And then if I need to move it, I can just use the arrow keys as well. And then I can move these layers on top of it. And then I can move these layers back on top. All right, so far so good. Now I need a little extra soft shape there. So I'm going to steal one that I've already done, duplicate it, Command J, transform it, stretch it, rotate it, bring it in. And then I'll show you how I can kind of cut things off. Right? So it goes like that. Then I need a white shape, about the same thing. Duplicate, Command T, shrink it a little bit. Rotate it, send it in, make it white. Remember, you do that by clicking within the icon of the layer. And now the question is, how do I cut into this, right? For these more complex shapes. And the answer is not trying to modify that shape, but to take your background color shape, that blue, right, and build new shapes on top. So I'm going to do a polygon tool, a triangle, right? But I'm going to pick its color to be this background blue. So it matches exactly. That way I can modify it, Command T, and this time I'm just going to warp it. And take kind of cuts out. Where I think they're needed. So this is just to get us used to some of these mechanics. And then I can move it around. Sometimes I make an extra shape, just hit delete when you do. You can use the move tool to get it right and to keep transforming. You'll just keep seeing the oddities and the limitations. There we go. Okay, I need some gray shapes. Command J, Command T. This isn't quite white. This is like a slightly lighter gray. That actually cuts all the way behind as well, like this. But I'll get to that in a second. So let's find that color, something close to it, maybe exaggerate it a little bit. Good. Maybe a little bit lighter. Why is it not selecting it? There it is. So you can always go back and modify that color. Then I'm going to take that same color, duplicate it, move this down like so. Maybe warp its edge a little, like that, and move it. Down and through. Then I have this little bit here. And I'm going to use, let's see, just a regular rectangle. Command T, tilt, push on it, steal a color from somewhere else. Once I hit return, right. And then Command T, work first to distort it. And then to warp it. And so you just right click within that transform window and you can get to all those different options. And using warp a lot is going to give you your best practice at modifying vector anchors once we get to Illustrator. This is kind of Photoshop's way of doing that. These are called anchors and Bezier handles to create these crazy shapes. And they can get twisted on top of each other and they can become really annoying. And if that happens, you just hit return and then Command Z. Try to keep it as simple as you can. So I'm going to try to curve it a little bit, Get rid of those hard